Founder mode is going viral right now. What the hell is it though? It certainly wasn't invented by Kanye West, even if Jared Palmer says it is. Founder mode is a mindset that is being pushed by the Y Combinator VC world, specifically by Paul Graham, the creator of Y Combinator. You're going to see a lot of people talking about this over the next few weeks, if not months, because it seems like this blog post has resonated with a lot of people. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet. If you didn't already know, I'm actually a Y Combinator founder, which means that I made a company that Y Combinator invested in and helped us go through their boot camp to be more successful. The company that went through YC is Ping Labs. We made Ping the video call service, as well as the Pick service I just released, and of course, Upload Thing, the big one. Really hyped the stuff we've built in the founder mode mindset that we've tried to maintain throughout, but this, more than anything, hopefully positions me in a way to digest this blog post and figure out what lessons we can learn from founder mode. So let's dive in. Founder mode. I zoomed in a bunch because if you know anything about Paul Graham, it's his obsession with keeping things simple and never changing them. This is what his blog looks like by default. Not great for mobile. So we're going to zoom in a bit to make it a little more readable. You know what? I'll let chat hang out for this too. Why not? Good enough. Founder mode by Paul Graham. By the way, all Paul Graham's essays are dope and at least worth learning things from. Paul's one of those people who's both really smart and really concise and simple with his communications. He actually will make fun of you if you use really unnecessary verbose words showcasing your vocabulary. And I've been very inspired by his way of communication. And I try to be similarly simple with the way I explain things. Using complex words to explain a complex thing is fine, but really smart people and really talented educators can make something really complex feel and sound really simple. And it's a thing I've strived for since I started making content, since way before then even. So love his mindset. Let's dive in here. At a YC event last week, Brian Chesky gave a talk that everyone who was there will remember. Most founders I talked to afterwards said it was the best they'd ever heard. Ron Conway, for the first time in his life, forgot to take notes. I'm not going to try to reproduce it here. Instead, I want to talk about a question that it raised. So, important thing to know about Y Combinator talks is that they regularly have founders of companies that have been through Y Combinator, or even a few who haven't, come to speak off the record at YC. That means that these founders get the opportunity to vent in a way they often can't. This is a painful realization for me now that I'm famous, so to speak, is I don't have the same ability to just privately rant about something annoying me without constantly having to worry about it leaking and people taking the wrong message and repurposing it and using it against me, my brand, my business, etc. I'm still new to this, so I've only been posting videos for a bit over 2 years, and it's still stressful to have to think about what I can and can't say at any given time. That's why Y Combinator is so strict on the we don't share what was discussed. You can be as crazy as you want. And as a result, some of the YC talks I've seen have been things that are just not public info at all, that are very deep, very informative, and very real. And it's funny because everyone associates like YC and the whole venture capitalist world with super artificial, faking it till you make it type stuff. YC is as real as it comes, almost to a fault, where they are so blunt and straightforward with shit. And that includes things like this, these talks that are not recorded and you'll never get to see. I wasn't at this event, so I didn't get to see this, and I never will. The theme of Brian's talk was that the conventional wisdom about how to run larger companies is mistaken. As Airbnb grew, well-meaning people advised him that he had to run the company in a certain way for it to scale. Their advice could optimistically be summarized as hire good people and give them room to do their jobs. He followed this advice, and the results were disastrous. So he had to figure out a better way on his own, which he did partly by studying how Steve Jobs ran Apple. So far, it seems to be working. Airbnb's free cash flow margin is now among the best in Silicon Valley. Interesting start. Airbnb is a mess, would be putting it lightly at times. Like there have been some rough experiences for a lot of people, myself included, but it's definitely gotten better. Their willingness to like fix problems, they're caring for the hosts as well as the guests. It has improved over the last few years for sure. And it would make sense that my bad experiences happened because things were far too abstracted. I will also say that the other founder of Airbnb was one of our earlier advisors when we were in Y Combinator. And he gave us awesome advice. He explicitly told us to throw away our pitch deck and just show the product as our pitch, which went great. And it's a huge part of why we were able to raise. So yeah, they know the founder side well. And this is interesting because it feels like they left it and then went back. The audience at this event included a lot of the most successful founders that we funded. And one after another said the same thing happened to them. They'd been given the same advice about how to run their companies as they grew. But instead of helping the companies, it ended up damaging them. Why was everyone telling these founders the wrong thing? That was the big mystery to me. And after mulling it over for a bit, I figured out the answer. What they were being told was how to run a company that you hadn't founded, how to run a company if you're merely a professional manager. This is a very interesting point. I have to think on this. I give a lot of advice to early founders and people who are going in that direction, and even engineers who want to work at these early stage companies. And I find that this happens a lot, especially when they spend all their time talking to investors. Because if you're an investor that hasn't successfully started a company and gone all the way with it, you only know what's working based on specific signals you see. So you see a company raised a bunch of money, hired a bunch of people, and then it was more successful. And you start to link these parts together and assume that's the process, that in order to be a successful startup, you have to raise money and then hire a bunch of people and then use them to execute. But the order of events there is entirely wrong, and you can only think that way if you're looking at it from outside. These things work very differently internally. You find success by building the right thing and obsessing over it and the people who want to use it. It is obsession over individual customers' needs that makes you successful. And as crazy as it sounds, like, I still take all of the sales calls for all of the services we've built. It's important to be on that ground level, doing support and being involved in these ways. A thing I say a lot, and I think it's within my best advice, is that people screw up by hiring for the work they don't want to do. I screwed this up with my own YouTube channel. I hired an editor because I didn't like editing. I didn't want to edit. And when I hired an editor, it meant I can go focus on the thing I love. But there were some problems. Since I didn't love editing, I couldn't be a great workplace for an editor because I couldn't relate to them. They'd feel alone. It meant that my bar for a good editor to hire was a lot lower because I wanted to just get this work off my plate. I was down to hire whoever. And since I didn't love editing deeply, my bar for what a good edit was really low too. So I didn't have good feedback to give my editor or any process around it. It's just like, okay, here's a bunch of files, figure it out. Eventually that editor joined me with sales at Ping, and I had to edit my own videos. And when I started editing my own stuff, I started to get pretty good and started to actually really like it. And now I'm at the point where I miss editing. I genuinely think I will stop recording videos before I stop editing them and doing thumbnails. Because by doing those things myself, I ended up falling in love with them. And the current editor, FaZe, huge shout out. Without Jeff, this channel wouldn't exist anymore. He has been able to run this unbelievably well. I owe him so much. And hopefully I'm finally paying him enough to make up for it because we've doubled his salary over twice now. Anyways, FaZe reached out, not just because he wanted to help with edits, but because we had a lot in common. We both loved skateboarding. We both loved tech. We were both nerds about Final Cut specifically. So when he reached out about a skateboarding thing and I saw in our chat history he had mentioned editing, I brought him on. And he has been phenomenal. But I had to go through 4 other editors first. And I went through those editors because I didn't understand editing well enough yet. And I was hiring people not because they were great or the right fit or the right thing for my team. I was hiring them because I didn't want to be editing. Now apply this to startups. Oh, I'm wasting all my time on support. I need to hire someone to do support for me so I can focus on the important things. No, fuck you. Support's important. You got to do it. You got to do it enough to like it. And then when you like it, and then when you understand it deeply, that's the point you hire. Stop hiring for the things you don't want to do. Hire for the things you love to do, so you're forced to deal with the things you don't want to do. I think this is my best advice. I've been giving it more and more, and I've watched people's brains just crumble, be it a creator or a big business. The realization that their hiring process has been around avoiding the things they don't want to do because their goal is to stop thinking about it. Most YouTubers hire an editor too early because they don't want to think about editing. Most founders hire sales and support too early because they don't want to think about sales and support. If you're a founder that loves coding and software development and engineering, great. Hire someone to do it so that you're not able to focus all your time on it. That's what I did with Ping. Mark and Julius do basically all of the code now. I'll hack out an example of what I'm thinking of, and then they go fix it and make it a real service. I spend my time doing everything else because that's important. That's my job as a founder. Yeah. How are you going to know if somebody's good at support if you don't learn it first? Absolutely. This applies to basically every industry. I learned this lesson as a creator, and now I'm applying it to my life as a founder. And that's also been a hard thing to accept, that I've learned more about being a good founder through YouTube than through software development and working at companies. In fact, YouTube has helped me unlearn things I learned at Amazon and Twitch as I've tried to be a better and better founder and person running this company. And again, if we go to the advice that you get from investors, okay, I have a whole separate tangent to do here now I think about it. God, we're not even halfway through and I'm tangenting this far. Fun. So, another fun tangent. Imagine you're a founder and you don't know a lot of other founders, which is very common. When I was starting my company, I knew 2 or 3 founders, and I only met those founders as I was applying to work at their companies. They told me I had founder energy and I should go give that an honest shot. So I had them helping me out a bunch early on, and it was helpful. One of them was really helpful, but also really focused on some of the wrong things. So since 2/3 of his advice was really good, I assumed the last third was too, and it wasn't. And I had to learn that the hard way. And that's fine. We all do. But even then, I still felt kind of lonely because I only had this group of 2 to 3 people, both of which were running companies and were really busy. And that loneliness is a killer. Do you know who preys on the loneliness of founders more than anyone? Venture capital. They notice that you're looking for places to hang, to talk to people, and to not be alone. They jump in. They get their hands in there. They give you all of the feedback, all of the conversations that you're missing. Because if you worked at a company for 5 years where you have people around you to talk about constantly and to talk with constantly, and now you're alone as a founder, that is the opportune time for VCs to jump in and give you all of the things that you're not getting anymore because you don't have users yet. So you're not getting lots of feedback from them to be excited about. You don't have coworkers to hype you up about the things around you. You just don't have that content, I guess. It's hard, like I don't have the right word for it. You just aren't getting the reception yet. And if a VC can come in, if an investor can come in and fill that gap and be the one you talk to, they can get a much better deal on your company. And that's a strategy a lot of VCs love to take, is providing you that safety net, that comfortable place to talk and discuss and be part of. The catch being they're going to use that as leverage to get a better deal and also to isolate you from other places where you might get better advice. And if you see a lot of VCs talking shit on Y Combinator on Twitter, this is the reason why. Something Y Combinator did really well is drop you in a room full of other founders, all of which have the same goal: make their company successful. Now imagine you're an investor and you see all these startups, and they used to be things you could invest in for really cheap. And all of a sudden, Y Combinator has helped them all realize they're actually worth a bit more. And they've created this like auctioneer style of buying into companies that has resulted in way more info for the founders, way more feedback, community, and support for those founders. They no longer have to rely on the investors to not feel alone. And the deals those investors get are much worse, which is why a lot of them respond by shitting on Y Combinator, saying it's a scam, pushing really hard to steer people away from it because they're getting a worse deal as a result. But that's awesome. And that's one of Y Combinator's specific goals. They have compromised their margins. They have made it so they get a worse deal because their goal is to set up their founders to be the most likely to be billion-dollar companies. Because if they let in 500 companies and 498 of them fail, one of them becomes a $100 million company and one of them becomes a multi-billion-dollar company, that multi-billion-dollar company just paid for all the others and then some. So if they could get 7% of a multi-billion-dollar company or 20% of a company that is going to fail, they'll always take that 7% and then do everything they can to set you up for success. Other investors are quite often not just trying to push you towards that really happy exit, they're trying to maximize their return. They often will care more about your Series B, if they're investing in Series A, than they care about the long-term exit, because they can sell some of their shares pre-market. They can do a lot of other things with that money. Some don't. And like, I'm a scout with Andreessen Horowitz. They're generally pretty good about this. The flaw, I would say, is when they try to advise you through these things. Like, a thing I've seen, even with Andreessen Horowitz startups, is if these founders talk to the investors too much, they might do weird things with their cap table. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds on this, but there are different ways to invest in a company early stage. The most popular one was invented by Y Combinator. It's called the SAFE. It stands for Secured Against Future Equity. What that means is all of the investors in Ping own 0% of Ping right now. All of Ping's shares are owned by employees. In the future, when we're adding more equity to the pool because we're doing something like selling the company, doing a Series A with actual stock, going public, whatever it is, when we are creating new stock at a financial event for the company, that's when their investments convert. And they don't until then. Because by doing that effectively as an IOU, it makes managing my cap table and managing my investments comically easier, the point where I don't have to worry about it right now. Where previously I would have had to have a legal team managing every single person who has sent money and signed my company, which is a lot of people. Some of these VCs don't like that because they like to own the equity. They want it immediately. And they've seen these other companies that succeeded, and all of them had real equity. All of them did things this way. So they advise you to start doing those things early. Really easy way to get terrible advice. And I've seen this happen far too often. Another thing I've seen is founders taking their advice from investors and taking feedback from investors way too seriously. Here's a harsh reality check for y'all. This one was hard for me to take. You know what? We're going full screen cam for this one. Investors will never tell you the real reason they're not investing. I know that because I'm an investor. I've invested in I think I'm at 40-ish companies now. They won't tell you the real reason. Michael Seibel from Y Combinator actually put this really well. There are 3 states when you pitch me your company. So you just described what you're building and why I should invest. 95% of the time, what I'm thinking is, no, I'm out. Not my thing. 1% of the time, I'm like, yeah, this person knows what they're doing. I'm in. That other 4% of the time, so 4 times more likely that I'm willing to say yes, my thought is, I would hate to say no to this person. I'm not going to go out of my way to offer to invest, but I'm not going to immediately turn them down like I would those other times. So if they ask me hey, how much are you in for? Or here's our valuation. Are you down to sign a check within this range? It'd be much harder for me to say no to those people. And that's also a fun hack if you're a founder. Always ask if they're down to invest. And if you can, drop a number because it makes it so much harder for them to say no. That aside, that 95%, it's not like I have specific facts of oh, these 3 things are wrong. If you change them, I'm in. It's much more a gut feel of I'm not vibing with this. It could be the idea. It could be the team. It could be that the slides suck and they don't really know how to explain things to people. Because if they can't convince me, both as a user and an investor, I just don't see a lot of likelihood of them succeeding. But it's hard to verbalize that and give them specific reasons. But it feels bad to just say no, which means most investors, when they say no, they try to justify it to themselves. They try to explain why, because it doesn't feel good to just say no. You have to give a reason or you feel like an asshole. So they will. And they usually make it up on the spot, and it's usually not good advice. And I've seen this a lot. Some of the advice I've seen founders get, the reason why an investor passed, they take it so deeply to heart that they rethink their whole company sometimes. No. We were one of the better companies out of my batch, and we still got passed by 30 or so investors. I think I did 5 to 7 calls a day for 2 weeks straight. But when we met with the right VCs and it clicked with them, deal was closed in 15 minutes from when the call started. The trick isn't to cave to every single thing an investor says is wrong. It's to talk to other founders, gut check yourself, be honest with yourself, do mock pitches with people you actually trust, not other fucking investors, but other founders who have been through it too, and figure out how to make the thing you're building as appealing as possible to those investors. And yeah, don't listen to investors when they tell you anything other than I'm in. The biggest mistake I see so many founders making is listening to investors too closely, letting them on their table too early, letting them be involved with their decision-making process. The best advice a VC ever gave me was Y Combinator telling me to not listen to VCs. And I hope this is helpful advice for y'all as well if you're interested in going in this direction. VCs, if they knew how to run a company, they'd be running a company. They're not. There's a reason. Those who can do, those who can't do, teach. Same deal here. Those who can build. Those who can't build, invest. It's silly, but it's painfully true, painfully often. Stop trying to make your company appeal to people who don't even know what appeals to them. Back to this article, because I could literally tangent on this point forever. I love this point that he's making, though, which is that the advice that people are getting is coming from investors. And investors could be someone who was at a company early that exited. It could be somebody who worked at Facebook as a manager for 8 years, making $800,000 a year, that now has a bunch of spare income to spend. It could be somebody who's only ever worked at a VC firm. But these people don't run companies. They don't know how to run companies. And even if they did, they don't know how to run your company. So don't listen to them about any of that shit. Just run your goddamn company. And it's so common this happens. Yeah, millions of dollars worth of advice in 4 minutes. I better get some shares. Anyways, also, if you are starting a company and you are building in the tech space and you think it might be interesting to me, write me a really cohesive 2-sentence in my Twitter DMs on why I might be interested. If you do a good job at that, I will respond. And if you don't, I probably just won't respond. Don't take it personally. It's just hard to sneak into my brain. But yeah, I do invest. Hit me up. I am very hands off. Usually we chat a bit. I give you a little bit of advice around the space that you're building in if I happen to know about it, or just an audit of how I build things if that's interesting to you. What you're doing is cool. Awesome. Hit you the money. You go back to work. Anyways, back to this article because this is huge. We were here. But this MO is so much less effective that to founders, it feels broken. There are things founders can do that managers can't, and not doing them feels wrong to founders because it is. Also, remember how many billions of dollars Paul Graham is worth? Do you see how beautifully simple this language is? The most complex word here is effective. Most of these words are 5 or less letters long. It's beautiful how much knowledge he can fit into such simple language. He has broken my understanding of what writing well is. And he's been doing this for a decade now. And I'm pumped that he's maintaining it. In effect, there are two different ways to run a company: founder mode and manager mode. Till now, most people, even in Silicon Valley, have implicitly assumed that scaling a startup meant switching to manager mode. But we can infer the existence of another mode from the dismay of founders who've tried it and the success of their attempts to escape from it. The MO is modus operandi. It's the mindset, the way of doing. And I love this point here too. The split between founder mode and manager mode, and the call out that people who are escaping from it are finding success with that escape. I've even had to do this myself, like hard reality check. And this is possibly my biggest failure in my career. We hired up too early at Ping. We had way too many people early. We had 6 people at a point, 7 if you count the part-timer. And that was rough. We did not need that many people. Not only was it just more than we needed, it was actually slowing us down. Because keeping everyone aligned and focused and building in the right direction was tough. And then if we had to change directions, it was even tougher. So right before the layoff crisis of 2023, like end of 2022, I made the hard decision to cut down and go into founder mode with just Mark and me. And we went all in on developer tools ourselves. And eventually, Julius was contributing so much code to the open source stuff that I said, okay, fuck it. I need to pay you. And we brought him on part-time. He's working full-time hours, but technically is contracted. Yeah, Julius is essential to our success now. But like, that's more than anything because he also has this founder mindset of just fix it. Like I posted a screenshot yesterday. Let me find this because I think this is a great example of founder mode. Move fast, fix things. I was trying to do an upload from the dashboard and I was on the new infra and it didn't work. And he told me to try it again. So I did. And he replied, and it worked. And he replied, I definitely did not push straight from main to GitHub or from GitHub mobile on our production infrastructure. And on one hand, this is silly. And if you're a big business looking into using upload thing, I would understand why this would make you somewhat hesitant. But on the other hand, this is what makes founder mode work. You're fucking shipping and nothing else. And this was another one of those lessons I learned early on with Ping. If you looked at the different groups of people and how many of them retained versus churned, the users that were the most loyal to Ping weren't the ones who had no bugs. The most loyal users were the ones who had a bug, reported it, and then we fixed it really fast and told them when it was fixed and thanked them. Because you have more confidence in a thing that failed and the owner fixed it quick than you have in something that never failed in the first place. Because if it never failed, you never even think about it. But if it did fail, and then it got fixed, and you know in the future if it fails again, you have the ability to get it fixed again, your confidence ends up much higher, and even subconsciously, you just end up more attached to that thing. So it's better, and this is again like my safety nets versus guardrails thing. This is why I love safety nets, because it makes it so much easier to fix things when they break. And they always will break. It doesn't matter how big or small, how many unit tests you have, none of that matters. Your shit will break. Being able to fix it quickly will always be the better thing for user loyalty, to the point where it's actually better to have bugs than not, as long as you can fix them quickly. Yeah. Founder mode works for all of these reasons. Small scale, big scale, whatever. If you can own bugs, talk to your community and fix them, that helps at every scale. Even when I was at Twitch, the reason that ModView had the most positive sentiment of any launch at Twitch since gift subs, which is crazy because gift subs obviously massive. But what we were doing with ModView, much smaller potential reach, but the satisfaction and overall sentiment around it was unbelievably high, to the point where they thought there were issues with the tracking. That happened because our product manager and designer were so deep in this chaotic world of working with moderators. I remember I was talking about a creator that had some issues on, not even on Twitch, but on a multiplayer game that went from no voice chat to voice chat out of nowhere. And she was one of the top ranked players in the world in solo queue. And since they added voice chat and she was a woman, she's now at a huge disadvantage because either she turns on her mic and it gets flamed for being a chick the whole game, or she doesn't, and now she is missing a strategic advantage the other team has. And that sucked. I was like, wow, that's a really insightful story, and I hadn't ever thought of things that way before. I brought that up with my product manager, to which he responds, oh, Steph, yeah, I know her really well. I'm actually a mod on her channel, and she's in my group chat where I collect feedback for these things. That's founder mode. That manager, he wasn't a founder, he was a product manager at Twitch, was so deeply ingrained in the community, so deeply understood these moderators and these creator spaces and their needs, that he could build the exact right thing. And if one of them had an issue, he would ping me, I'd fix it that night. And that responsiveness, that collaboration nature between the users and the business is essential to this founder mode mindset. Your users shouldn't just be comfortable with it. They should be excited to let you know when things are wrong because they know they're going to get a response from someone they trust. That can work at giant scales like Twitch. That can work at even bigger scales like Amazon. Believe it or not, I've seen that too. And it can work on these tiny micro scales of a startup with 5 customers. But you have to hold on to it tightly or you will lose it. Yeah, the CEO subtweeting on it always feels like magic. I totally agree. Doesn't matter how big or small you are, this feeling is real. And CJE, who works at Axiom, by the way, channel sponsor, best way to deal with your logs and analytics for your servers. So if you wanted to see what servers are crashing and why, Axiom is the way to do it. CJE is there, big part of the community. He finds the things to work on by reading Discord and Slack, not linear. Founder mode, absolutely founder mode. I also want to make an online quiz of questions. And if you say yes to the certain ones, I can have you on a founder mode spectrum because these are the types of things that is absolutely founder mode. Anyways, back to this article. This is great. There are, as far as I know, no books specifically about founder mode. Business schools don't know it exists. All we have so far are the experiments of individual founders who have been figuring it out for themselves. But now that we know what we're looking for, we can search for it. I hope in a few years, founder mode will be as well understood as manager mode. We can already guess at some of the ways it will differ. Bold, I like that he didn't predict it. He said he hopes for it because I also hope for this. The same way that like you don't even think twice when somebody's like, yeah, I got promoted to manager and I hired 15 people to work on this with me. It's just like, yeah, that makes sense. But when somebody says, oh, I saw a bug on Twitter, so I went and fixed it and pushed the fix, the response is insane. Here's an example of that, actually. I tweeted a fun bug about Discord that had been annoying me. When I had my Discord client in a small enough view, all of these buttons on the bottom would make the text 1 character vertical. Like, this is embarrassingly bad. This is so hilariously bad. Thankfully, there's one person at Discord that operates in founder mode. He's an intern, Advith. He's 19. He was an intern at Discord, and he was fixing so many of these small things constantly. My reply, holy shit, you actually did just fix that. And I added the CEO of Discord. Don't just hire this kid, but put him in charge of PR and product. I stand behind that. This kid is founder mode. And Discord, more than almost any company, desperately needs it. They need somebody who's in the fucking trenches, understanding the problems that people are having with these things and fixing them. Also founder mode, one more call out. There's someone in our chat here, UI UX Phil here, has been rebuilding the homepage for PickThing, the service I just dropped, throughout the stream. He even just made a dark mode version. Apparently he has to travel tomorrow and it's 1 a.m. at his time, so he's finally going to bed. But he spent this whole stream showing us how nice our website could look and giving us everything we need to go fix it. That's founder mode. I can't say no to him now. He has fully inserted himself in my brain and we are going to redo, like, this homepage isn't bad for me whipping it together in like an hour before going live. But he took the opportunity, the initiative, and the ownership to just dive in and make it. And I love that. That is a rare thing. And I wish more people had that in them. I am so thankful he does. And he said hi to YouTube as well. If you're looking for a designer, UI UX Phil, same handle on Twitter, I believe, worth reaching out to. He literally said founder mode in our DMs. For real. For real. We will be paying him. It's not free work. Don't worry. I will compensate him for this for sure. But that ownership, that mindset, that drive, and that decision to be that close with the users, that is founder mode. And thank you, Phil. Go fucking sleep. We'll figure this out later. I appreciate you immensely. Ownership is the biggest thing without question. Back to this article. This is great. The way managers are taught to run companies seems to be like modular design in the sense that you treat subtrees of the org chart as black boxes. Oh God, that's triggering. Oh, the amount that irks me on like a deeper level. I dealt with this so much at Twitch where it's like, yeah, we should do that, but the moderation team isn't interested, or the mobile team isn't down, or the mobile team needs more headcount first. Stop saying the black box needs something different inside of it. Put me in touch with the person inside so I can tell them what the fuck to do. If you are working at a company where this is the case and you are similarly irked by it, I highly recommend that you try to start ignoring the black boxes. Start reaching out to the individuals on the team. One of the best ways to find the right ones is look at their GitHub repos, see who's contributing the most. There will be at least one more driven person on every team. Every team has somebody who's more driven than the rest. Even if they don't meet your expectations for drive, at the very least, they feel a bit lonely. And if you can reach out to them and be their safe space to complain about these things not moving, you can build a really strong relationship there. You might have what happened to me where your manager complains that you're in too many meetings because he's insecure that you're meeting with people he can't even meet with. But you can build these relationships. Best case, you now have an in to get these things fixed when they're broken. Worst case, you get in trouble for it, maybe even get fucking fired for it. But you just made a connection with the one person on that team that is actually somewhat valuable. And if they decide to quit and go somewhere else, they remember you. They can be a referral. If they go to start their own company someday, they remember you. You might be an early hire. You might be a co-founder. You might get to be an early investor. Or they join another early stage startup and they can bring you in super early and give you this buy-in because they know you had the initiative to make that connection and do those things. If you are booking your own calls to get through these black boxes, those connections are so much more valuable than the job role you have right now. And even if you happen to lose it as a result of doing that, if you're already uncomfortable with the workplace, you just found the one last value you can get from it. Anyways, you tell your direct reports what to do, and it's up to them to figure out how. But you don't get involved in the details of what they do. That would be micromanaging them, which is bad. Yeah. I have an interesting take on this one. This again comes to the things you love. I'll give a real example here. We're in the middle of rebuilding most of the infrastructure for Upload Thing. If you sign up for Upload Thing and use it right now, once you integrate it, you generate a URL on your server that you send to the user to do the upload. That URL goes straight to S3. That's nice because we don't have to eat any ingest, have servers running or anything. It's truly serverless. But there's a lot of things we want to be able to do as the file is ingesting. We want to be able to check it. We want to be able to respond to the user when the upload's complete with the data from your server. We want to be able to resume chunks if the user stops uploading and then starts again later. We want to be able to do a lot of things that require a server. This is a really exciting arc. And I knew that. And I could have nerded out and worked on this for a month myself. But instead, I gave it to Mark and Julius, which meant Mark gave it to Julius. And we have still been involved throughout, seeing how it works, asking questions, him asking questions too, making changes, dogfooding it. It's not like he went in the box and he presented it when it was done. But I specifically went out of my way to have the fun work, the thing that's like the big arc, and pass that on so I wouldn't be distracted by it when I'm busy doing the real thing, which is running the fucking company. And it's so easy for founders to get super distracted with those fun things. And that's been part of my founder mode journey, is hiring people who love the same things you love so you feel bad not giving those to them so you can focus on the hard shit. And I probably come off as a little micromanagey when I'm chatting with him about these things. It's like he had entirely changed how the URLs work. And I was just like, no, that sucks. That's too long. Fix it. And he did. In almost no time, he fixed it. It was great. And those types of things are kind of micromanagement, but are also important to doing the right thing. And it's a hard balance to strike. And I'm still figuring it out myself. Anyways, hire good people and give them room to do their jobs. Sounds great when it's described that way, doesn't it? Except in practice, judging from their report of founder after founder, what this often turns out to mean is the following. Hire professional fakers and let them drive the company into the ground. Oof. So common. And the problem with fakers, people who are like showing up with credentials that look really good and don't get anything done, is since they're already faking, they're very down to lie. It's hard to even know if they're lying. Sometimes it feels like they actually believe the stupid shit they're saying. The number of people who had great credentials, who I would speak with and they would actually seem like really great coworkers, that would then block me for some stupid reason, keep me from shipping, and then throw me under the bus saying I'm holding the whole team behind, when in reality, I'm the only one fucking shipping code. It's so common. And these fakers, they don't go away. When you've hired one of them, they're incredibly hard to get rid of because they know how to hide in the shadows. And all they do is they pop out, get a headshot on somebody valuable, and then disappear before you even notice. Good engineers churn no matter how great your workplace is. It doesn't matter how awesome your company is. The best people have this incredible ability to find other interesting things that might be even worse for them, but their drive will bring them other places, and you have to accept that. These fakers don't fucking go away. You can even fire them and they find some way to sneak back in. I've even seen that happen. And if you have them, the only way to get rid of them is to obsess over every detail of what they're doing and catch them when they make subtle mistakes. And it is hard as balls to do. It is really hard. I've even been caught into this where like I had a coworker I was really excited to work with and didn't realize that they were subtly behind the scenes trying to get me fired because my work output was making them look bad. And it's so easy if you're not careful to suddenly have all the good engineers leave because they're tired of it. And then the faker hires more fakers. And now you have a company run by these people who don't actually want to do any work. And then you accidentally ended up with Google. It's so easy to fall into this trap. And I'm not comfortable saying micromanagement is the best way out, but at the very least, it makes it easier to catch this when it's happening and jump on it earlier on. But I would absolutely agree that these people who's like, let's look at Discord, for example. I guarantee you there are Discord engineers who are getting shit internally for this random 19-year-old fixing all these bugs. And I guarantee you their response is something like, well, we have a process for this. We don't want to regress the product more. And it's important to make sure all of our platforms have the same experience. The cohesion is our job. We're making sure when we ship things that they stay high quality and the quality never dips and the experience across all platforms is as expected. We have processes for a reason. Why would you let this kid come in and fix everything? He's not fixing things. He's just causing problems for everyone else. You need to fire that kid or you're going to lose me. I guarantee almost that exact conversation has happened within Discord. And I know that because that exact conversation happened with me many times at Twitch. It's a big part of why I quit. I didn't realize at the time it was because I had the founder mindset. One theme I noticed in both Brian's talk as well as when talking to founders afterward was the idea of being gaslit. Fucking, I guess I pre-read because that's exactly what I've been dealing with. Founders feel like they're being gaslit from both sides, by the people telling them they have to run their companies like managers and by the people working for them when they do. Usually, when everyone around you disagrees with you, your default assumption should be that you're mistaken. But this is one of the rare exceptions. VCs who haven't been founders themselves don't know how founders should run companies, and C-level execs, as a class, include some of the most skillful liars in the world. Yeah, I went on this rant earlier, but yes, like both people who never were really early at a company, people who weren't founders of a successful business that end up doing VC, as well as people who got pulled into a successful business really far along that didn't understand it well. To some extent, they're fakers too. If you're hired in as CEO of a company, you have to fake it for a while because you don't really understand why it's working. You might eventually get there, but it takes a while. And you don't understand the founder mindset ever because you're just trying to keep this ship from sinking at that point. And those people don't give good advice. And as Paul's putting it, they're some of the most skillful liars in the world. And honestly, if you listen to things like the All In podcast, you might slowly be waking up to it because it's very similar. What's the citation here? The more diplomatic way of phrasing this statement would be to say that experienced C-level execs are often very skilled at managing up. I don't think anyone with knowledge of this would dispute that. Yeah, if you're joining a company late and you have to manage people above and below you, gaslighting is an important skill because the person above you is wrong. You have to convince them out of it. And one of the best ways to get someone to believe something different is to gaslight them. So it is a skill in that sense. It's just not a skill I want anywhere near my fucking company as long as I'm there. Same with test-driven development. It's absolutely a skill to be able to do TDD well. It's just a skill that qualifies you out of ever working near me. It is what it is. Whatever founder mode consists of, it's pretty clear that it's going to break the principle that the CEO should engage with the company only via his or her direct reports. Skip-level meetings will become the norm instead of a practice so unusual that there's a name for it. How crazy is it that like skip level is a thing that we regularly use because the concept of meeting with your manager's manager is weird? Like the point where I got on rocky ground with my last team at Twitch was when my manager saw how often I was meeting with his manager and his manager talking about how to fix the fucking org, and he took that personally. He was offended that I was meeting with his boss and his boss's boss more than him. Fucking bullshit. And you know what? He should have felt bad because it meant he wasn't qualified to do his job. If his response to me meeting with those people to try and make things better was insecurity, then he is not fit for the role. And he wasn't, and he stopped being a manager soon after I quit. It was a pretty explosive exit, to be fair. Regardless, the fact that meeting up this way is rare enough we have terms for it is silly. And I fucking knock on wood, I'll swear on this, at any point where I'm running a company, every person at that company will have the blanket ability to contact me on or off the record about anything they want to, confidently. That I will never compromise on. And I push these things really hard at every scale I work at, every business I work with. I'm now at the point where I won't even use a new service or company if I can't talk to the CEO. If I'm not confident that I can reach out to an executive at the company and get a thing fixed, I'll use the smaller alternative where I can. Even if your service is better, if I can't talk to the founder, I'm out. It is what it is. As Paul says here, And once you abandon that constraint, there's a huge number of permutations that you get to choose from. For example, Steve Jobs used to run an annual retreat for what he considered the 100 most important people at Apple. And these were not the 100 people highest on the org chart. Can you imagine the force of will it would take to do this at the average company? Yeah, like, to be frank, and to toot my own horn a bit, my role at Twitch was never particularly high up because I was getting blocked on promos all the time by people who were pissed off at me. But if they did a meeting like this, they did an event like this, I would have absolutely been invited as one of the 100 people. Like, don't even have to think twice about that. It's like, even people there at the time and people there now would probably say the same thing, despite my level, despite the fact that I didn't have employees that I technically managed. I was within the most impactful people at the company at the time. I was shipping more and faster and unblocking more and more effectively than most people there. Your org chart cannot and should not represent the amount of impact people are having. And those impactful people should feel like they have every tool they need to unblock themselves and have more impact. They should be able to meet with you, chat with you, work with you, ship with you. And more companies need to work like this. Imagine how useful such a thing could be. It could make a big company feel like a startup. Steve presumably wouldn't have kept having these retreats if they didn't work, but I've never heard of another company doing this. So, is it a good idea or a bad one? We still don't know. That's how little we know about founder mode. Obviously, founders can't keep running a 2,000 person company the way they ran it when they had 20. There's going to have to be some amount of delegation. Where the borders of autonomy end up and how sharp they are will probably vary from company to company. They'll even vary from time to time within the same company as managers earn trust. So, founder mode will be more complicated than manager mode, but it will also work better. We already know that from examples of individual founders groping their way towards it. Another prediction I'll make about founder mode is that once we figure out what it is, we'll find that a number of individual founders were already most of the way there, except that in doing what they did, they were regarded by many as eccentric or worse. I'm excited to see this cliff note here. Curiously enough, it's an encouraging thought that we still know so little about founder mode. Look at what founders have achieved already, and yet they've achieved this against a headwind of bad advice. Imagine what they'll do once we can tell them how to run their companies like Steve Jobs instead of John Scully. Oof, the Scully dig. Too real. The second cliff note was, if the practice of having such retreats became so widespread that even mature companies dominated by politics started to do it, we could quantify there's a word I would never have expected him to use. We can qualify the senescence of companies by the average depth of the org chart of those invited. I like that idea. Like, how high up or down are the people going to these events as a way to know that company? Also, this is the one I was curious about. I also have another less optimistic prediction. As soon as the concept of founder mode becomes established, people will start misusing it. Founders who are unable to delegate even things that they should will use founder mode as the excuse. Or managers who aren't founders will decide they should try to act like founders. That may even work to some extent, but the results will be messy when it doesn't. The modular approach does at least limit the damage that a bad CEO can do. Oof. Fair point. Also fun, look at the list of people who gave this a read before it was posted. Jessica Livingston is Paul Graham's wife, essential to the success of Y Combinator early on. There's a famous story of founders going in for an investor meeting, and Jessica cut their fingernails before because they hadn't trimmed their fingernails for 6 months because they were grinding so hard on their company. But like those little types of things, like she was almost like the parental figure for early YC and helped shape it into this thing it is today. And Paul credits her so much, and I love that. Like them as like a duo are as tight as they are and see each other as essential as they are. Not enough wives of people like this, not enough partners of people like Paul get the credit they deserve. Paul tries so hard to credit Jessica, and I'm going to do my part here too. Like, she is fucking incredible. And right next to her, Elon fucking Musk. To be fair, love him or hate him, I have iffy feelings overall. Absolutely is operating under founder mode. Could also be an example of someone who you need to limit the damage of, but he is doing it. And of course, Gary Tan, the current CEO of Y Combinator. Lucky to call him a friend. We actually have some fun collabs coming up in the near future. So if you liked this, definitely keep an eye out for those because, the founder arc is starting. I am feeling more inspired than I have in a while. I feel validated. This is the way I like to build and think. It's so nice having an article that's really breaking down this way of thinking. And I hope going forward, more people will see the benefits of going founder mode. So until next time, Brat Summer's over. Founder mode fall has begun. Peace, nerds.